You're listening to Northwoods Church Matters, a podcast of Northwoods Church in Evansville, Indiana, where we discuss why the local church matters and things that matter to the local church. I'm your host, Matt Higgins. On today's episode, we're going to be talking with our student ministry assistant, Rachel Clark, about teens and dating. Specifically, we're going to get into what are some of the generational differences between Gen Z, Millennials, and Gen X and Boomers about dating, and how does that apply to parenting today? All this and more on today's episode of Northwoods Church Matters. All right, well, welcome back to the podcast. Today's going to be a fun episode. I'm here with Miss Rachel Clark. Rachel Clark is a friend, but also she is our student ministry assistant here at Northwoods Church. And she's been doing a lot of the heavy lifting on our summer events. And her day job is that she is a middle school teacher in Henderson, Kentucky. So that's awesome. And you still have your sanity in the midst of that?
Some days, most days. That's why I keep coming back for the summer, for church stuff, apparently.
Well, if we're sane over here, that's saying something.
That's right.
All right. Well, today we're going to be talking about teens and dating. And I've asked Rachel to come in and talk about this because, one, this is a discussion that we have a lot in student ministry about teenagers and dating and the ramifications about that. But also, in her day job, I'm sure you encounter a lot of issues regarding teens and dating, right?
Absolutely. It's always the culprit of drama most of the time.
Yeah, dating and drama, the two Ds, they go together.
They do.
For sure. All right, so we'll start off with a fun question today. What was your first date like?
So we went to Chili's and I showed up in jeans and a t-shirt, and he comes in with like black pants, like a button-down shirt, black tie, and I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't dress appropriately for this. And then I literally said that to him, and he said, I just got back from a funeral. And I was like, oh no. But we stayed and talked at Chili's for a while, and then we went back to my house, and we have a lake in the back, and so we walked around and just talked until the wee hours of the night, because that's what you do when you date.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'm going to have to check my dress code for Chili's now. I'm going to have to get like a Dumber and Dumber suit and go into Chili's with the cane and the top hat now. I don't remember first date, but I remember
Dana's first date?
I remember my first encounter with Dana and first date. First encounter with Dana, I was taking the bus at college at James Madison University because I didn't have a car, and you took the bus everywhere you went if you didn't have a car. Mm-hmm. And I was trying to go to the mall. I was on the Bluebird bus, and Dana comes on, and she sits right across from me, and we knew each other from the Baptist Student Union. And I try to say hi. I try to start conversation, and it's a 20-minute bus ride to the mall.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
And she doesn't talk to me the entire time. And at the end of the bus ride, she gets up and she says, "You should come over to my house sometime."
I guess you did a good job.
Well, I'm thinking to myself, why would I go over to your house? Why would I do that?
Maybe she was just really nervous.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
But I remember actually our first date was, I had planned out we were going to this really nice Italian restaurant.
So you planned it out?
Well, partially. We were doing dinner and a movie. And so I picked dinner and she picked the movie. And so I picked out this really nice Italian restaurant in the area, probably more than I could afford, and then asked her what movie she wanted to see afterwards, and she was adamant about seeing Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. So I think I was probably overdressed for that, but, you were
trying to impress her.
I guess so. It's a Jim Carrey movie. All right, so let's talk about just differences in dating between my generation and the millennial generation.
Oh, gosh.
Well, there are some key differences.
Yes.
There's a lot of key differences. And I think one of the things that parents have difficulty with is that dating has shifted a lot since they were dating and what dating is like now. And so I'm just going to talk about a couple of these things. First one I want to talk about is called the 5-year rule. And I'm getting this from a book that was written by Kara Powell. It's called Growing Young. And one of the findings of that book is that the millennial generation and then Gen Z, the generations that are coming up now, are generally doing things 5 years later than previous generations, whether it be getting married or having children or even finishing college. Millennials and Gen Z, they're doing things a lot later than the previous generation. Yeah. Have you found that to be true?
Yeah, I mean, even just in college life, like you would find the average person who's like going to college doesn't even finish in 4 years anymore. They're usually finishing in 5 or 6 at that point. So if you finish in 4, you're like, you get the gold star, but they call it the extra lap or something like that. And so with that, I think it just delays marriage and dating and all that because it becomes pushed back onto the back burner.
Yeah, and even the term gap year. I mean, when I was in
Yeah.
college, I never would have thought about taking a gap year or taking a year or two off of college and then picking it up later. And that's pretty common with millennials and Gen Z
Yeah.
nowadays.
Or you have like people who can't afford college. And so they just sign up for the military knowing, hey, like we can go do that gap year with the military. And like I had friends all throughout college who did that. They did military for 2, 5 years, whatever, and then went to college. And so they were coming in super late. And then that's when they started and it was completely paid for them. So everything was way pushed back for them.
Oh, sure. It's interesting why kids are doing this in the new generations that are coming up. It turns out a lot of it has to do with pushing career over marriage. That marriage and children are getting delayed because there's a feeling, well, I need to go out and establish myself and have a good foundation first for marriage. I need to have a good job, a good house, and have all these things first before I'm ready to get marriage. Older generations will probably laugh at that because there really is no great time to get married. It's inconvenient. It rearranges your life. Everything in your life rearranges when you get married because you have to adjust your priorities. But do you find it's true that a lot of your friends they're pushing career over marriage and family?
Yeah, there's definitely like a more priority to like have yourself established to some degree. And I think especially like from the guy's perspective, a lot of my guy friends feel the need that they won't be liked by the dad of the girl that they're pursuing if they don't have like certain things kind of figured out. And so just trying to make sure all of their like ducks are in a row before they start pursuing so that they, can't make a mistake, I guess, going forward, or they have the answers to the right questions.
Yeah, and it's funny if you look back on stories from Gen X and then the boomers,
Right.
that they'll tell stories about, well, we were flat broke when we got married, and they look fondly back on this time when
They were poor and happy.
Yeah, they're poor and happy. And I think Gen Z and then millennials are generally afraid of that. They don't want to be poor and then not established, and that's a big factor in them. Another thing I've found in marriage counseling is that I've seen a lot of young ladies who are pushing off marriage because they feel like they need to have the hashtag wedding, like the huge wedding. Like statistically, I looked this up on the internet, and everything on the internet is true, of course. But according to NerdWallet, the average cost of a wedding now is $33,931.
That's so crazy.
It is so crazy, and part of that is people don't have weddings at churches anymore.
Right.
Like everything's a destination wedding or an event wedding. When's the last time you went to a church wedding?
Oh gosh. Well, we had an outdoor wedding a couple months ago that I was in, but I mean, it wasn't even at the church. So
Yeah.
it's been probably 2 years, honestly, because I went to one 2 years ago.
Yeah. And so a lot of ladies, they're looking for the perfect Instagram or Instagrammable type wedding.
Yeah.
And so that costs some money.
The Pinterest perfect wedding.
Pinterest perfect wedding.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't get on Pinterest at all. That shows I'm a Gen X person. I don't get on Pinterest, but that it's a factor is that people are putting off marriage because they want the perfect wedding.
Right.
And they're choosing career. And a lot of that comes down to selfishness.
Yeah.
And maybe it proves that some of us really aren't ready to get married because marriage is not about selfishness. This is the opposite of those things. And to be ready for marriage, the key quality that you need is willing to sacrifice and accommodate and to live with another person and to sacrificially love that person as Christ loved the church. I mean, it's really difficult.
Well, and I think that statement in and of itself, the sacrificial element is missing from my generation. It's not, and even the younger generations, because it's just the relationship itself is like over romanticized in some extent. And it's just the relationship itself is what people want and not the commitment. And so it's whoever I can get whenever I can, that's who I want. And whatever makes me feel good right now is what I want, not what's going to make me feel good, when I'm angry or when it's hard. But whatever is convenient and easy, I think is kind of part of that element too. The commitment is hard and it takes time, and we're being trained up in some sense by the culture to just have what we want when we want it and not fight for that, even if it's hard.
Yeah, it's like I tell people when I do marriage counseling with people, the key factor that shows that you're ready for marriage counseling is when you're ready to fix yourself instead of the other person.
Right.
That to genuinely have a Christ-like marriage, there needs to be a factor of I'm following Christ and I need to be sacrificial in the midst of this. Yeah. Another factor in dating relationships that is different from my generation to younger generations, I'm going to call this next point, this is the Catfish Generation. And what that really means is we have a generation that's growing up with technology.
Absolutely.
They don't remember rotary phones or even phones on the wall. They've literally grown up with computers and wireless phones and things like that.
They don't even remember AOL dial-up.
No, they don't. They don't remember the sound of.
I play that for my students, and they're like, "What is that?"
It sounds terrible.
Yes.
According to Pew Research in 2015, 59% of Americans said that online dating was a good way to meet people, and that's a huge cultural difference.
Oh, for sure.
And one of the things I always tell parents is that there's a key difference between our generation and millennials, and it's that my generation would never, ever think about meeting somebody online that they don't know. And millennials and Generation Z, they're okay with that.
Oh, yeah.
How big is your Instagram friend list?
Well, I have 1,000 something followers, and I only follow about 350 of those people. Yeah. So it's not even remotely, but I'm weird about that stuff, but I know that I'm like the exception to my generation, because I learned a couple days ago that we have people who I know from ministry who have Tinder accounts, which, in case you don't know what Tinder is, that's like the swipe right, do you match kind of thing, just by appearance. It's not even how old are you? You get to know their name once you make a match, but it's just very you can quickly do it. I had a friend doing that. A group of us all went to the Keys, and he was swiping right as we were driving through the cities. I was like, wow, this is kind of insane. I didn't know that's what people did. And it was trying to figure out who you match with. So I feel like it's weird still, but that's normal for a lot of people my age.
Yeah, it's totally normal to be involved with whatever. Tinder was hot for a while, and I'm sure there's something else that's out there. Stuff like eHarmony and Christian Mingle, they're all passé now. Right. It's all about the apps.
Well, now it's even if I find someone cute on Instagram, I can just swipe up and meaning you can send them a message and then say hey, how's it going? And that's how people are meeting now too. It's just through Instagram. Do you have a good page? Which we all know Instagram is not what it appears to be. People are different.
Sure. Which leads into the next point, that this really is the catfish generation, that people fake what they put on the internet. Yes. Surprise, surprise, that people fake actually what they put on the internet, but it happens all the time. And according to eHarmony, 53% of people lie on their online dating profile.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. You're trying to put your best image of you out there. I forget the statistic totally, but I heard one time that when kids Instagram and want to put out a selfie, they take 10 to 20 selfies and then choose the best one out of those selfies, because they're trying to present an alternate reality of themselves out there.
Emily and I just did that today. Actually, we were sending a group picture, and we're like, "Oh wait, that one's not good. This one is good." So yeah, it's true.
Yeah, there's benefit to that. I was looking through old photos in a box the other day, and I was like, "Man, it would have been really a benefit if we had the option to look through these before we shot them, because they're all terrible. The lighting is bad, etc." Let's talk about the next point, which is really that traditional dating is dead.
Yes.
And a lot of this has to do with technology. And parents often don't understand when their kid is in a dating relationship nowadays, because it doesn't start anymore with actually somebody taking somebody out to dinner or the movies or going to someplace. The term really is for kids, we're just hanging out or we're just talking.
That's exactly it.
Yes. And there's some fear and trepidation in the younger generation of actually going out on a date without knowing somebody, which is very interesting. That the new generation, they're very willing to meet people online that they don't know, but when it comes out to actually having a romantic relationship, they're very slow
Yes.
in doing that.
Yes.
How have you experienced that?
Well, like being in the middle school all the time, I hear students saying like, "Oh, we're talking now." And so that talking is like you're getting to know each other exclusively. So you guys are the only ones talking, but you're not like official yet. It's like the step before dating. So when you're dating, you have the title, which maybe when you wear the guy's sweatshirt, or nowadays it's the guy might wear your scrunchie on his wrist or something like that. And that's what it looks like to just be talking, and then or right before you start dating, and it's like you're just getting to know each other, but you're not official yet. And then once you have that title, boyfriend and girlfriend, the DTR defining the relationship, that's when you're dating.
Yeah. And so there's this extra phase that's added
Yes.
in. But I also feel like there's a bit of hiding this from your parents or your friends. Like you don't want to just tell them, "Oh, I'm dating this guy. We're just talking." And so parents, if you ever hear that term, it really does mean that these two people, they're interested in
Yes.
each other. So
They definitely like each other.
They definitely like each other. There's something that's going on.
And they're probably smiling a lot when they're on their phone talking to that person, and that's just kind of like one of those signs that you can tell if they're like getting giddy whenever their phone lights up or something when it's not you. Like they're probably talking to someone that they like.
Yeah. The last major point I wanted to bring up before we get into another phase is that for the generations that are coming up, cohabitation is normal.
Yeah.
This is not shocking to anyone who is a pastor.
Right.
Because when we do premarital counseling, this comes up all the time. According to Monitoring the Future, a statistic by them in 2014, close to 70% of high school seniors said that living together prior to marriage was a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
And that includes Christian kids.
Right. And
I can't recall the last time that I've had a premarital counseling session where this has not been a topic. This is just normative and prevalent, and it's done a lot of times for compatibility reasons. Right. Like we want to see if we're compatible with each other, but also practical reasons. Mm-hmm. Hey, let's split the rent and let's make sure that we can afford to live together. How many of your friends from high school, college did this? Oh,
well, one of my best friends did it. They lived together before they got married, and it was just that compatibility thing, like everything you had just said. And I think even as a teacher, I see our middle school students, like they think that's super normal because their parents are doing it. So you have, parents who have been married and divorced a few times, and then they just are living together with their significant other, and then or that their parents aren't really married, they just, like you said, cohabitate together. So they have a kid together, but they are not officially married, I guess.
Yeah.
So they're used to it. So we're growing up a generation now with like the current 8th grade, my 8th graders basically have practiced seeing their parents not be married.
Thanks for joining us today on the Northwoods Church podcast. If you'd like some more information on our ministry at Northwoods Church in Evansville, Indiana, please visit us online at www.northwoodschurch.org. Again, that's www.northwoodschurch.org. We'll see you next time.